All right, we got quite a few people, so I am just going to go ahead and get started. So, hey everyone, and welcome to today's panel on creating customer journeys that drive revenue. My name is Cassandra, and I'm the partner marketing manager here at SmartSites, a digital marketing agency, and I'll be the moderator of today's session. If you're sitting and listening, please make sure to mute your mic so that there are no noise distractions in the background. Also, we are recording this session and we'll send everyone a follow-up email with the recording after the event. If any questions pop up, please throw them in the chat so that we can get to them at the end during our Q&A session. So today we're going to talk about customer journeys and why the brands that are winning aren't always the ones that with the flashiest ads. They're the ones that build trust, remove friction, and surprise customers across every touch point. I am joined by 4 experts who live and breathe customer experience. They're helping brands craft smarter websites, more human automation, frictionless fulfillment, and memorable post-purchase moments. So quick icebreaker for our panelists. What's something that makes you abandon your cart instantly? It could be unexpected fees, confusing navigation, lack of reviews, whatever stops you from purchasing at checkout. And then as you answer, go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your company so the audience knows who you guys are. So Kristin, wanna kick us off?
I will kick us off. What is one thing that makes me abandon my cart? Really, honestly, probably my lack of money. But before that, would definitely be a difficult interface. I think if anything is glitching or, it's just hard to use, hard to understand, I'm definitely gonna, peace out pretty quickly. But yeah, I am Kristin, and I am the web design team lead here at SmartSites. Graduated from East Tennessee State University in 2012 with a degree in digital media. Very different times back then for the internet. I've been creating on the web ever since. So my interest really started in graphic design. Then I shifted into web, taught myself how to code a little bit back when I was just 12 and got my first computer. My mother was a web project manager just like me, so kind of followed in her footsteps. But we definitely like to combine web design with SEO here at SmartSites, make it a full experience from start to finish. So definitely have gained a lot of knowledge in the industry there. Started working with small businesses as well with SmartSites. So that's definitely shaped the way that I approach design. Thinking about the real people behind the screen that definitely just want to understand and grow with us. So that's me.
All right, Arian, your turn.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can jump in. First of all, this is awesome. Look at all these people. Super excited for today. My name's Arian Radmand. I'm the founder and CEO at IgnitePost. Before I tell you a little bit about what I do, so let's see. So I love the icebreaker question. I think for me, one thing that would make me abandon cart immediately is, I guess, kind of 2 things. So one is being upsold immediately. So I've been on sites before that you put something in your cart and you try to start checking out, and immediately it starts suggesting a lot of things, and it's kind of decision overload. So that's kind of a turn off and makes me kind of jump ship. And then the other thing is just having the site be super slow. Everybody's super busy. They've got 1,000 things going on. So just having too much of a delay, too much latency in the checkout as well is something that just makes me be like, just throwing my hands up. I don't even want to deal with this. So I think those are those 2 things make me jump immediately. But like I said, my name's Arian. I'm the founder and CEO at IgnitePost. IgnitePost, what we do is we are a robotically handwritten direct mail solution. So we help people create magic moments using real pen and ink handwritten notes that look like this, that get sent and actually arrive on people's doorsteps, that can be triggered in an automated fashion, just like any other marketing tool in your marketing tool belt. But the difference is our cards tend to perform about 30 times better than email and 11.2 times better than standard normal direct mail. So really love injecting surprise and delight. We're going to get into that and talk a little bit about that today. So excited to chat more about how we help people use this technique along the customer journey at strategic points, what those points are, how to figure out how to get the best ROI out of your customer journey.
Perfect. And then Shaun?
Awesome. My name is Shaun Brandt. I'm one of the co-founders at Oddit. which I'll get into. But for the abandoned cart question, I get triggered by so many different things, but I think the biggest one is when they default select optional fees. So shipping insurance or something like that, that just drives me nuts. That would probably be the biggest thing. And then the other part doesn't necessarily make me abandon cart, but doesn't necessarily give me a great feeling is a lot of brands, they're not strategic with the upsells in cart. It's just kind of like plugged in with their entire inventory or all of their SKUs. And none of them really treat it more like a retail setting where, you know, if I'm in the checkout counter at Target, it's gum, chocolate bars, water, things that you don't have to think about. It's just like, grab it, put it in. And so when someone tries to like upsell me a second bicycle in cart, it just infuriates me because it just is so stupid. You would never see that in real life and it shouldn't happen. And then with Oddit, my personal background is I've been a designer and creative director for about 15 years. Have started and sold off numerous different agencies in the UX space, marketing space, design. And Oddit was kind of a culmination of all that and really focused on just helping helping our customers optimize their customer journeys, whether that's, you know, you're trying to get someone to buy a t-shirt or you're trying to get someone to book a demo call. No real limitations there. It's really just about how do we optimize journeys for the highest conversion rate, regardless of what your conversion is.
Great. And last but not least, Karley.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Karley Daudell. For the Icebreaker question, I am probably the target market because I am rarely ever abandoning my cart as a chronic shopper. But to go off what Shaun was saying, for me, it's really about like the shipping fees, how much is it going to cost? When is it going to get to me? I am a chronic shopper, but also a procrastinator. So two really, really bad things. So I'm always paying for 2-day shipping. I'm always trying to find free 2-day shipping, anything like that. And that is one thing. If I don't see it, I'm going to like an Amazon or another marketplace to try to see if I can get the shipping speed faster. That's probably when I'm abandoning my cart the most, if I am. But a little bit about ShipBob and me. I've worked in logistics and operations for the last 8 years. I do consulting for brands on the operation front as well. And then really who ShipBob is we help brands with all things fulfillment. We have 60 warehouses in the US. And then for brands that do self-fulfillment or have their own warehouse, we have our WMS, our warehouse management system for any brands that fit that category as well.
Love it. So relatable and telling. Mine is actually shipping related as well. If I don't know like when to expect the item, I'm probably going to abandon my cart just because I'm also a procrastinator. So
right,
we'll just do that. All right. So we'll just start with the top, the big picture before we get into tactics. I'd love to hear how each of you define a high converting journey today. What does that actually look like for modern e-commerce brands? Kristin, I'll let you go first.
I definitely think a high converting customer journey today should just feel natural. It should look great, but most importantly, it should be easy to follow. People shouldn't have to hunt through fluff or scroll forever to find what they came to your website for. I think that's definitely a big issue people have. Content should be organized in a way that makes sense. So it should flow smoothly, actually helps them take that action. So you can still hit your SEO goals and get the keywords in there, but it needs to be helpful content that makes sense. So do it in a way that also respects the user's time. If they find what they're looking for quickly, they're more likely to trust you, engage, and convert versus you just throwing up a bunch of filler in there to try and get them to read all the way down the page, for sure.
All right, Arian, and I'd love for you to build on that. Like you've mentioned how important customer mapping is. So if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, for sure. And so that kind of dovetails really nicely because for us, like for me, the one thing to remember is that with a customer journey, it's different for every brand and every business, right? Conceptually, when we think about what is a customer journey, it's really every touch point that somebody would prospectively have with your business or your brand. So anything can be part of the customer journey. If somebody is out at a dinner and your brand gets mentioned, guess what? That just became part of your customer journey. So I think one of the things that we always start with, because we work with a lot of customers, we help people kind of craft customer journeys. And so the first thing that we start with is we kind of map out what is the ideal journey look like in terms of where are all the possible inputs, and then where are the most important strategic areas to actually get people. And so kind of diving into that a little bit, right? Especially today, nothing works in a silo. Everything's omni-channel, right? So we have things like push notifications that come to us on our phones, our watches. We have like live events that we're going to. You've got AI and ChatGPT that all kind of get incorporated. So step number one for me in terms of what does a successful journey look like? Well, what's your goal, right? So it always starts with a map of where are the inputs, where are people coming in? And then when you do have them kind of come in on your customer journey, where are the strategic points along that journey that you want to funnel people? And what are the most important things that you want to do along the way, right? Is it, getting people from, first time purchase into a subscription? Are you trying to get from purchase 2 to purchase 5? Is that like your critical point? So it's different for every brand. That's probably kind of the major takeaway, is that there's no one size fits all answer to this question of like, what does the perfect customer journey look like? But I can definitely tell you, number one, first step is to just map out what are your goals and what are the important points to get people. Because if you don't know that, if you don't have a map, then you can't start making decisions, because then you have no basis to figure out, is this good? Is this bad? How do we craft an actual customer journey that's going to help grow the business, given what your goals are? So that's number one. I'm actually curious too, if people want to throw in the chat, how many people have done that? I'm just curious in general. Have people mapped out their customer journey? Do you have a customer journey map? Do you have an idea of what are the important things that you want your customers to do? If you have, throw it in the chat. I'm curious to hear.
Great. And then Shaun, maybe you can touch on content hierarchy a bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of brands, when they're setting up their user flow or their kind of site flow wherever they're pushing traffic, they look to other brands in the space, or maybe other brands they look up to, and they just say, okay, well, they do this, so that must be the right way, rather than taking a step back and saying, okay, well, if we looked at a heat map on most websites, every user sees, or 99% of users see the first fold, and 85 see the second, and 75 see the third, and it goes down and down and down. And so you have to treat your content hierarchy like that, right? If you're only allowed to tell the user one thing, what would it be? And then if you can follow that up, what would the next thing be? And really structuring that content hierarchy to make sure that the most important value propositions that you have are surfaced first and kind of flow down the page. And that really goes for any page. I think a lot of brands just try and make it look good, and they don't consider the flow enough. And for the most part, a lot of your users aren't getting halfway down the page or all the way down the page. So you really have to take advantage of those early touch points and just make sure you're communicating value. I think the other thing that a lot of brands do when it comes to setting up user journeys is they sit in a room and they all decide, well, this is what's great about our product. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually your team is actually way too close to it to understand what people actually love about the product. So we always tell users, or tell our customers, like, just go into your reviews, go put all your reviews in a spreadsheet and just see like what are the most common words being brought up. What are people actually really excited about? Maybe you have a crap product and they're only excited about the shipping. Like you don't know until you really go into these reviews. And that's why you always see conversion people recommending push people to bestsellers, because people want that comfort of knowing other people bought the products. They want to know, what does everyone else love? And so when you're looking at stuff like that, you want to make sure that the hierarchy of information is there and you're pushing them kind of to that right spot.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Karley, you have a unique perspective being from the logistics side, so I'll let you kind of chime in here.
Yeah, and to also build off of what Shaun's speaking to. So for the back end, it's really about fast, frictionless, and transparent from checkout to delivery, right? You have clear timelines on when someone's going to receive the order, how much it is, clear returns policy. And one thing we see our top brands doing, which I can't recommend enough, and to speak to Shaun's point, it's on the product view page through integrations. You can actually put the estimated delivery time there. So when you're just viewing the product, you can see, oh, this is when I'm going to get the order by. And that really helps with conversion. We see pretty much all of our top brands doing that. So I can't speak to that enough. And then just having like a memorable boxing experience, right? Maybe you're using custom notes, which I'm sure we're going to get into, but just start to finish, it's frictionless, it's transparent, and it's leaving them with a really good experience so that they're going to want to go ahead and leave that review that you can then just point back to.
Great, thank you. So now that we've outlined, what great looks like, let's talk about where brands go wrong. What's one major mistake that you see brands make when optimizing their customer journey, and how can they fix it? Kristin?
Definitely for me in my space, I think most brands design their site based on their like internal priorities. I think they definitely fail to think about it from a customer standpoint. Most of the clients I work with, they know everything about their business, and I'll tell them like, you know all these things, everything that you do. A user's not going to land on your page and automatically know all of these things. So we definitely need to make sure that we're organizing every page as a landing page. We would hope that they would find them, organically through search. That's not always going to go straight to the home page. So we definitely need to make sure that we are keeping that in mind when we're designing every single page on that website, and making sure that the user is finding what they're looking for right there at the top. And I know we're going to say that a lot, but we all know that you don't want to dig through anything when you are trying to find what you're looking for. So definitely make sure that you're not showing off your company bios or awards at the very top. Show what, and those are great to have on there. You want to have those trust factors, but try to put that that filler stuff kind of towards down the bottom. If they're still interested and they want to see it, they'll scroll and see it. But yeah, definitely think about the customer and what they actually came to find. You can use a lot of tools. I know we've talked a lot about heat maps, and use some tools and find real users on your website. See where they actually click, where are they scrolling, where do they drop off. You can always run short surveys too, and ask simple questions like, what were you hoping to find on this page? But when you have the data, you can reorganize your site based on what your customers actually need, and not just what your team thinks looks good, for sure.
Wonderful. Arian?
Yeah, so I like this question. So we work with a lot of folks to help craft their customer journey and kind of figure out what strategic points on that customer journey would be good for them to use our handwritten note cards. And by far, the biggest mistake I tend to see is people focus too much on the very front of the journey. They kind of front load everything, and everything is about acquisition. If we think about the life cycle that a customer goes through, right? You've got acquisition, activation, retention, referral. But if you talk to somebody about a customer journey, overwhelmingly, everybody just kind of narrowly thinks about acquisition as being the customer journey. And so that to me is like the biggest mistake we tend to see with customers that we work with. Is to them, the customer journey is how do we get somebody from 0 to 1? Like, how do we get somebody who's never heard about us to, trust us and then, buy and become a customer? And then, when we kind of look at the rest of the journey, once somebody actually becomes a customer, that gets very, very little effort compared to the acquisition part, which is interesting to me because number one, the cost of acquisition is rising like dramatically. I think the stat that I saw from Business Wire is the cost of acquisition has risen by about 60% over the last 5 years, and I think it's going to continue to rise. So if you really want to build a big business, the businesses that are doing really well, the brands that are doing well, are actually focused on the latter part of that customer journey of, okay, how do we take a customer that is a new customer and get them to, buy again? Or how do we get them into a subscription? How do we get them to come back and refer folks? So the biggest mistake I tend to see is too much focus on that, initial point and not enough on the back half of the journey. And then the other side of that coin is, again, because we talked about this before, is it's different for everybody. So it depends on what strategically is important for your business, right? Facebook, when they launched, infamously had this KPI that they determined whenever somebody joined their platform, if they connected with at least 10 other people, then the probability that they were going to stick around and use the platform dramatically increased. So everything on their customer journey was, how do we get somebody after they join the platform to reach that kind of, 10-person threshold? But it's different for every company. The other side of that coin is, we've worked with a cat litter brand, and their most important point on the customer journey is right after the initial purchase, they need to follow some very specific instructions of how to transition their cat to this new litter. Otherwise, the cat's going to reject it and they'll never use the litter again ever. So, again, kind of going back to what I said before, it's different for every brand, but by and far, the biggest mistake I see is too much effort on just the acquisition and then not enough effort, in the latter part of that journey.
Great. Shaun?
Yeah, I think one of the major mistakes that we see when brands come in is, and we always ask this up front, is where are you driving the traffic and where are they coming from? Most of the brands in the space, at least that are optimizing their sites through us, they're spending, 90% of their traffic is paid media. And I think a lot of them, some of them are pushing to landing pages that are really strategically connected to the ads, but a lot of brands, they're running ads and then they're just kind of dropping the user wherever they want on the site, whatever product's selling well or whatever collection is new. And I think they're neglecting to tell a story across the ad to the site. So what I mean by that is, if the ad tells me kind of that entry point that we were talking about last question, the site shouldn't just follow up and say that again. It should connect it and drive them further down the story. So it kind of goes back to content hierarchy and trying not to repeat yourself. So if I'm telling them the key trait of the product in the ad, maybe follow up with something else about the product when they land there, whether it's the homepage or whether it's the product page. I think a lot of brands, they get the site set where it is, and then they just neglect to change it. A lot of our customers, once they get the site where they want it to be and it's kind of converting at an okay rate, they're like, okay, let's focus all on ad strategy. And they almost forget that it's kind of a 1-2 punch, that you really have to keep updating and optimizing constantly between both.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a really good point to call out. And then Karley.
Yeah, so from the fulfillment aspect, it's pretty similar to what Aaron was saying. It's really about like the post-purchase experience. You could have the most beautiful website in the world. You can be working with all the influencers, driving a ton of traffic to your website. But when it comes to the fulfillment, if it's unclear, lack of delivery visibility, or poor packaging, it's tough to convert those customers. And it's tough to get them to come back, right? If you have a bad shipping experience, it kind of ruins everything you did on the front end. So it really just comes down, as what I always tell brands, is choosing the right 3PL, making sure you're doing your homework, making sure you're understanding their SLAs, making sure you're tapping into how does the integration work with my e-commerce platform, really taking the work to make sure you're making the right choice. I think fulfillment is such a big aspect to post-purchase experience and making sure brands return. So I always just tell brands, it's a mistake I see when brands choose the wrong 3PL. Just take your time with it. Make sure you're doing your homework. Make sure you're asking for recommendations to other customers that use them. It's an easy mistake to make. I would say the good news is you can always fix it. But just saving yourself the time and energy, moving your inventory to another warehouse. It's not fun. I don't think any brand loves doing it. So just making sure you are taking your time to choose the right 3PL, you're comfortable with them, you've seen their warehouse, and you've gotten really good recommendations from other brands using them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karley. All right, so let's shift gears into more tactical territory. So you've all run countless audits, and sometimes small tweaks can unlock like a large reward. From the site audits that you guys have done, and I'm specifically talking to Kristin and Shaun, what visual or copy tweaks have you delivered that has delivered instant lifts in engagement or revenue, and why have they worked?
Yeah, I think people tend to overcomplicate stuff. It really is most of the time very, very simple, fast changes that are going to make a big difference. I think for me and what I do, one of the fastest wins is updating your CTA button. So instead of just a generic submit, like try something more natural, like get my free quote or see my plan. That's definitely something we've seen click-through rates jump instantly, just guiding that user exactly where you're trying to take them. Same goes for your homepage copy. So the simpler and more benefits focused it is, the more people will stick around. And another big thing is swapping out stock photos for real people, real products, real spaces. That definitely makes a difference. I think right now people can easily tell, you know, you're seeing the same stock imagery on every site. You're seeing a bunch of AI imagery. Use real images of your company, even if it's something simple like you guys all stand. I've had my clients, I'm like, can you please just make everybody stand in a line and take a picture in front of your sign? You know, at least we can see like you are real people. It makes people feel more comfortable instantly. It's not cold. And that, you know, again, doing those small, simple changes makes a huge difference in web design for sure.
Awesome. And Shaun, do you want to chime in here as well?
Yeah, I think agree with everything Kristin's saying, and I think when it comes to button labels, really any copy on your site, when it comes to conversion, it's all about clarity. Clarity is king. It's with button labels in particular. I like to go through the exercise with our customers of just saying, just delete all the button labels, just so they're just blank canvases, and then just tell me where they're going. So go to the button, click on it. Where did they go? Did they land on bestsellers? Then label it shop bestsellers, not explore, right? Clarity is going to get them there. I want to click somewhere where I know where I'm going, right? If I hit add to cart, it adds the product to cart. It's extremely clear. You will never see a different verbiage on that button because it's clear and it's a direct action. That should be the same for all the rest of your actions on your site. Very rarely do we see vague, cheeky, playful button labels actually get more clicks. Are they cool for the brand? Sure. Do they get clicks? No. And then the other thing I think a lot of brands sleep on when it comes to this is using your headlines to inject social proof and trust building. If you just imagine most brands, they're driving paid traffic, their users are scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or Google, whatever. They're on social media in that kind of just that terrible state where you're just swiping and scrolling, and they click through to an ad. You have such a tiny amount of their time. And so if they're just scanning your website in that manner, which a lot of them are, they're just getting the highlights, right? They're seeing the headlines as they go by. And so a lot of times you don't have that subcopy to convince them of something. And so using the headlines to communicate social proof can be really effective, right? So a really simple example is instead of just saying reviews as the headline for a review section, say trusted by 100,000 people, over 5,000 five-star reviews. You're going to see it a lot more consistently in e-com lately, but that's the reason. It's because if people are scanning and they don't actually get to the reviews and they don't see how many you have and they only saw the headline, I still want it to pack a punch and I still want them to see it. So I think those are two really easy tricks to just, for any brand, whatever you're selling, just clarity is king and use your headlines to promote social proof.
Great. I really appreciate that little tidbit right there. So now let's talk about some fun stuff, which was delight. There are a lot of unexpected touches that make people remember a brand and want to come back. How do you create moments of delight across the customer journey? Kristin?
I think as a designer, my first thought is I always go to looks, and I know that, you know, we've talked a lot about people overdoing it with effects and making sure that their website looks good. But unfortunately, especially with me working with a lot of small businesses, I tend to find I have the opposite problem. They come in and they want us to write a bunch of content for their website to boost their SEO, but it looks terrible. So I think finding that balance really of, you know, how do we show our brand, not just in what we're saying, but in how we display it and how it looks. And it doesn't have to be anything overcomplicated, but, you know, it's not about those flashy gimmicks. It's about the small human touches that make someone feel like there's a real person behind the screen. I think we've overdone it a little bit with having a bunch of pop-ups in your face and chat bots and all of these things that we know are automated. So, I mean, think about your product pages. Use real customer photos instead of stock imagery like we talked about. I love when there are review sections where you can see actual photos from customers, so you can see what it actually looks like when it gets to you. Just hover effects that are simple to show that something's even a button. I've seen a lot of things that it's a link, but you don't know it's a link. You know, it's a coffee bean that rolls when you scroll past it, you know, just little fun things that will make somebody want to scroll more and see what else you have going on. Even little thank you pages that don't just say thanks for your order, but shares, you know, I've got customers that do behind the scenes videos of the teams packing it. Something they can film just really quickly to show that we are actual real people that pack these orders. You know, it builds trust. And let's be honest, like, again, with so many people leaning into AI and SEO stuffing, I think it's definitely refreshing when a brand speaks like a person and actually gives you what you came there for. And it makes me feel a lot more comfortable in spending my money for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. And Arian, I'd love to hear your take on this, especially on the psychology of delight.
Yeah. This is kind of our bread and butter. I love surprise and delight. So with us, one of the things that we do with a lot of our clients is to actually apply some science and psychology along the customer journey. And so one of the things that we use a lot is a theory called peak end rule. And we didn't come up with it. It was developed by a popular psychologist named Daniel Kahneman, I believe. But basically it says, you know, along a journey, people as humans, because, you know, let's face it, we're making these products for other people. And as we behave as humans along a journey, there are two critical areas that our brains are kind of wired to remember the most. And he calls them the peaks, so intensely positive experiences, and then the end of the journey. Like, as humans, we're wired to remember those two things. And so what we try to do is we try to look at a customer journey as exactly that and try to figure out where are the best points to create those intensely positive moments and map it to peaks and then the ends of the journey. So, you know, again, this is, if you take a look at, you know, like concert festivals and things like that, there's a reason why the headliner comes at the very end of the festival and they don't start with it, because as humans, we remember the very end of an experience. So, you know, we apply some of that science and psychology here. So taking it one step further, how do you actually put that in practice? So this goes back to what we were saying before with kind of mapping out the customer journey and figuring out where are the important parts for your business and where is it super important for somebody, like what actions do you really want people to take along the customer journey? So that gives you a map of where it's important to insert some of these intensely positive areas. So it kind of starts with that. That's one side of the coin. And then once you identify them, you know, injecting surprise and delight, there's a lot of different things that you can do. So, you know, at IgnitePost, we specialize in sending real pen and ink handwritten cards at those moments. And so that's a really easy way that you can inject a lot of surprise and delight, especially when people aren't expecting it. So, one, cutting through the noise with something physical. Two, remember the whole idea between surprise and delight is the first part of that combo is surprise, and no one is surprised by the ordinary. So one of the things that we also harp on is trying to think outside of the box and be original. You know, if you think about things like, you know, at the holiday times in December, everybody gets a holiday card in the mail. So while it's great to do that, you're not necessarily surprising or delighting everybody. But if you take that same experience and you move it to the middle of the summer and do something like a Christmas in July or something like that, now you have both surprise and delight because people are totally not expecting it. It's a really nice gesture, and it injects that peak in a specific customer journey that makes your brand memorable, sets you apart, and really, has that surprise factor. So, kind of two sides of the coin, going back to what we were saying before. Yes, map it out, but map out the customer journey, but also use some science and psychology to kind of really figure out where are the right points along those journeys to actually have an intensely positive experience.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself. Shaun, how do you create delight?
Yeah, I think whether it's on site or after the fact, it's easier to convert an existing user than it is a new user, right? You have less convincing to do. And so I think a lot of brands sleep a little bit on that post-purchase experience and what that looks like. And you can do it really simply without adding a ton of cost. Like, there's a lot of brands out there that sell supplements where maybe 50% of their traffic joins subscribe and save right off the bat, but the other 50%, they're trying it for the first time and they're not sure if they want to take it every month or every 2 months, whatever. So you see a lot of brands, they'll have a QR code on the package that just says, when you're ready, just scan here and you can reorder. That's a really simple detail. Same thing, a lot of supplement brands, they'll give you a nice container so that maybe you want to leave it on your counter because it looks really pretty instead of in your cupboard. If it's on my counter, it's likely going to be top of mind every morning when I see it. I'm not going to forget to take it. Now I'm going to work through all 30 days in 30 days instead of the competitor who's got this ugly ass bag that's in my cupboard and it takes me 50 days to get through my 30-day supply. So I've got faster resale of my product. And then lots of stuff can be done just in the packaging in general. A few years ago, we were working with this is external of Oddit, but working with a hair product company, and we designed all the packaging in baby food packs. So they had shampoo, body wash, pomade, that kind of thing. And as part of the packaging experience, you roll it up as you use it, right? To squeeze it out the top, just like a toothpaste. So every time you roll it up, it would kind of show a line of how many uses you have left. So if I'm going to do my pomade, get to the 3/4 of the way up, and it says 15 uses left, then 10, then 5. And then there'd be a line at the top when they had 5 left, and it just said time to reorder, and gave them a quick action to like an actual URL to go order more. Seems really simple, but you'd be surprised how many people, when they're reminded of that each time, will do that versus go to the drugstore and get a different product. And then the last thing would just be things they aren't expecting. So literally surprises in the packaging. One thing that we always push users to do is something as simple as stickers. Stickers are free, very cheap and very accessible. And it gives you an opportunity to inject other parts of your brand into the experience. So, you're not just shipping them a bunch of stickers of your logo. Maybe you hire a designer and do some fun illustrations that are seasonal or something like that. These are touch points that are then now spread across their life, right? Maybe they put one on their fridge in the grad. Maybe they puts one on their laptop. They're little reminders throughout their life that are just, oh shit, I forgot about that brand. And in the short term, very small effect, but over the long term, it's great brand building. And when you start to open up these packages and you're expecting a pair of shoes, but you get extra laces and a sticker pack, you just feel better about it. Even if the size is a bit wrong, you've got a little bit better feeling in your mind, and builds a little bit of brand trust.
Yeah, I love that. I've gotten like free hats and stuff too, and it's always just like a nice little touch.
Yeah.
Karley?
Yeah, Aaron, I really like your example of like the beginning touches to the end touch. So I will take fulfillment as we are the closing act. So when it comes to shipping and fulfillment, I mean, there's so many things you can do, like Shaun mentioned. I'll give like real examples of brands we work with. Bloom Nutrition is one that I think does this really, really well. Is they do, for any first-time buyer, they're putting in their hero SKUs, their top performing SKUs, samples for anyone that's first buying their product. that's new to their product, I think that's just a great way to get someone to come back to reorder or try something different. I think free samples in those first-time buyer orders is huge. And then just knowing who your loyal customers are as well, I think you can really surprise and delight them as well. I think, sometimes we're so focused on conversion in the first-time buyer. It's really recognizing who's consistently coming back to your site and rewarding them as well with some sort of, thank you note, some sort of free sample of a new product. Our top brands really, of course, hone in on their most loyal customers, and what they're doing is they're putting in a sneak peek of their new products and a QR code so they can get feedback on those products. And that's pretty simple to do through Shopify and a lot of these e-commerce platforms and setting up those flows. And then secondly, it's really around shipping, like speeds and how much it costs. I mean, I'm not sure on this call, I feel like everyone pretty much loves free shipping. So it's really around how you do that. What we recommend, and this can't be used for every brand's so different, but when it comes to offering free shipping, how you do it at a cost affordable rate is really just distributing your inventory. The magic number for us is 3 to 4. Of course, this depends on the brand and the size and the volume and what you're shipping and how much your product is. But typically, it's utilizing 4 fulfillment centers, one on the East Coast, one in the Midwest, or Texas is also super central, and then having some fulfillment on the East Coast. And then what you're doing is your order's coming in to your fulfillment provider, and they're saying, okay, Karley's ordering this. She's in LA. We're going to ship it from either our Arizona facility or our California facility, and it's getting to Karley in less than 2 days. And we're able to charge standard ground shipping. And sometimes brands absorb that cost and then they offer free 2-day shipping. And that's really how they do it. So it's something I recommend. I think, Amazon has just really, unfortunately or fortunately, set the standard to free, fast, affordable shipping and quick shipping. So just really important that you think about that and really just over delight your customers with that, and just having cost affordable options, or offering at least, free standard ground shipping.
Karley, I love that you mentioned that, because I've noticed a lot of brands lately, I'll select ground shipping and then I'll get it within 2 days. And I always wonder, how did that happen? How did they do that? So that's really interesting to hear that perspective.
Yeah, that's the best. Whenever I can get something in 2 days, I'm literally so pumped. And so excited. And you can set the bar, like you said, low. You can do standard ground shipping and then you're getting it in 2 days. You're like, oh my gosh, now I know that pretty much I can select standard ground shipping and I'm going to get it really, really quickly.
Yeah. Sweet. So moving on to the next question. I know that we are living, in a digital first world, but obviously, talking about shipping, boxing, samples, physical touch points are still super powerful to create that emotional connection. So how can real world experiences be woven into an otherwise digital journey to increase retention and average order value? I am going to ask Arian to go first.
Yeah. So again, this is something that we help clients do all the time. So with us, everything is about how do we develop and build a relationship with your customers at scale. So that's everything that we kind of think about from a high level. One of the best ways to do that, and there's actually science behind this, is the more you can connect with the customer, with the people behind your brand, the more you kind of encourage and build that relationship. So at a high level, that's what we try to do, is we try to think of these touch points as relationship builders. And then from there, that kind of drives everything else that we do. I like that you started this question off with, I know that we live in a digital world, but how can we remember that we're actually real humans living in the actual real world here. And I think that's a super interesting point that in the world of screens and everything kind of gets lost. But remember, as humans, we evolved over millennia, not in front of screens. This is extremely foreign to us as humans. Early humans, we learned about our environment by actually interacting with it and touching it and feeling it. Tactile feedback is still super important, to our reptilian brains. And so if the only touch points you have in your journey is really just digital touch points, you're missing out on the most impactful thing that you can do to a human, which is involve all of their senses in an experience. And so, that's kind of a core part of why we even started IgnitePost and why we do what we do and enable folks to actually send real physical mail, and then kind of go a step beyond that and actually have them be able to send real handwritten notes to customers at scale at strategic points. So, for me, that's kind of one part is we think about this of how do we develop a relationship further and how do we have a touch point? How do we think about it as deepening that relationship? And then two, we try to have those touch points essentially connect the recipients with the humans behind the product. So whether that's the person that makes the product or your head of customer experience or customer success, the kind of two sides of that same coin is figuring out those strategic touch points and then connecting your buyers with the people behind your actual company. That's how you kind of think about how to inject some, I guess, like a human touch point in there that will actually result in people wanting to come back and buy from your brand again and again.
Right. And then Karley, can you expand on this from like a shipping and fulfillment perspective?
Yeah, this is the cheesiest thing that I hope I say all day, but I always say what's going to get 100% open rate, and it's your package, right? Like you're going to open your package. And so it's just making sure it's the right thing. And I think handwritten notes and anything customized like that will really, just set your brand aside, and can't speak more highly to that. And then it's just really understanding like who your customers are, right? You're not going to appeal to everyone. It's really around like, how can you, have this unboxing experience? How can you have loyalty inserts in there? How can you have free samples in there? How can you really up level that personal touch? And then a lot of our top brands are building communities. It's like a QR code, especially like to Shaun's point, the health and wellness. We work with a brand, ClearStem. And so in their packaging, how they're, making a digital world more in person and having those personal touches, especially when it comes to skincare. Skincare is pretty much different for everyone. And so what they're really doing well, which I think, a lot of brands are doing as well, is just building that community, having those free samples in there along with some sort of QR code to get them in a Facebook group so they can talk to other people that might be dealing with, similar types of acne and how they deal with that. Like anything like that, I think goes a really long way and just builds that retention and that loyalty, especially when you can build that community.
Wonderful. All right. So I know we've been talking a little bit about like customizations and like automations. But like, what's the balance between automation and like the human touch in the modern customer journey? Like, where do you see brands getting that wrong? And this is for everyone. We'll start off with Kristin.
Think of it like this. I think use automation to make the customer's life easier, not to make your brand feel robotic. So like, for example, if someone books a consultation through your site, you kind of want to get an instant confirmation email or a text reminder just to make sure that it even went through, that they got it. The automation's done right. It's helpful. The customer expects that. Or say if they place an order, the system should automatically send shipping updates, let them know when it's out for delivery. You don't need a person to do that part manually. But if the order gets delayed or the customer has a billing issue or they're about to sign like a $5,000 service contract, that's really not the time for a chatbot or a canned response. They want a real person to step in, someone that can answer their questions, offer reassurance, make sure that the customer feels heard. So definitely those high emotion points in that journey is when they're going to want that real human. So automate the routine touch points and then keep the human touch for the high emotion, high stake moments of their journey for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arian, I know you like to shift thinking from like customer centric to relationship centric. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. And so kind of just echoing what Kristin said, really it's about going that extra step and going from like we've all been familiar with that marketing adage of you need 7 touch points before somebody actually recognizes your brand. So we got to this point where everybody kind of just feels overloaded with a lot of different touch points, none of which actually feel like personal anymore. You feel like you're kind of being marketed at. So kind of going back to what I was saying before, everything that the more you can make it feel like you're actually authentically building a relationship, the better results you'll get. Just because things are automated doesn't mean they have to be impersonal. So with a lot of the things that Kristin just mentioned, what we try to do is figure out what are those touch points that we can inject that kind of human point in that will allow folks to actually understand that, okay, there's actual other folks behind the brand that are helping me, supporting me, creating the products. So you can automate those for sure, but just because they're automated doesn't just mean create a bunch of touch points and set it and forget it, put it on autopilot. You really have to be intentional about what those touch points are. And it kind of goes back to almost everything that folks have brought up here, everything from mapping the journey to figuring out, what's most important to your business. And then once you have that, you can certainly then figure out, all right, how do I automate some of these things? But specifically, how do I make sure that every touch point feels authentic and helps me build a relationship with folks as opposed to just feel like I'm just marketing at people.
Yeah. And then Shaun, I'd like to hear from your perspective, like on the email and like web design front, how do you really, where do you see brands getting that wrong with the automation part of it?
Yeah, I think especially with how fast AI is moving, I think it's become really accessible to utilize AI, whether it's in chat or your emails for writing them or sending them. And I think you really just have to put in that extra effort to make sure that even though it can be really easy to automate things, and in a lot of cases it can get it right and speak almost like a human, just working really hard to make sure that those prompts and how you're training it feels like your brand. At our business in particular, it doesn't matter who we put on chat. If it's to the founders, it converts higher. And that's because we have a certain knowledge base and connection with the customers that just makes it easier. And it's the same with emails. When they feel like they're coming from a brand, it's less likely that I'm going to hit mark spam or throw it in the trash or just mark it done. If it's written, a little similar to what Arian does with the handwritten notes, if the email feels like it's written by a human versus this overly designed marketing email, it's more likely going to get read. So I think just finding that balance, like Kristin said, there's always going to be emails and things, touch points that they demand that type of stuff, right? Where it's okay for it to be automated, like a customer receipt, right? That can be automated. But if I'm checking in on their order and how they like it, make it feel human, make it feel like it's actually someone from your team asking because they care, not because you're actually trying to get in their inbox to resell them something else.
Definitely. And Karley?
Yeah, I think everyone really nailed it. Like automate your shipping, right? Like automate how much inventory is going into each fulfillment center. Like you can automate that stuff, but I think everyone nailed it. It's like, don't over automate, which can easily happen nowadays, and have levers in place when there's an escalation issue where someone's like, I got the wrong order, my product came damaged. That's when you bring in a real person to help that with that claims process or help them through that, just to make sure, the customer journey stays consistent and they leave with a good experience versus here's an automated message on how you really, like, you fill out that claims and just putting a personal touch on it.
Wonderful. And then we have 2 more questions. I know we're kind of almost at the end here, but we'll go through them super quickly. So about first impressions, you have like 10 seconds on your website to really make or break the experience for somebody. What should brands be doing right away to keep visitors from bouncing immediately? Kristin, can you go first?
Yes. So I always say there are 3 things that you need to answer right away. What is the site? What do you even do? What can I do here? And why should I care? That's what I always tell my clients. I'll get on the website and you cannot tell what they do. They just have a bunch of filler, a bunch of images. I'm like, okay, what do you actually offer? So if I can't tell right off the bat what it even is that you do and what you're expecting me to do on this website, why should I pick you over someone else? I'm gonna bounce off pretty quickly. So as long as you're answering those 3 things right away, that's the best tactic for laying out your content.
Wonderful. And then Shaun?
Yeah, I think you really want to, like Kristin said, touch on those 3 things. I think in addition, clarity in your visuals. So let's say you have a supplement product and you're showing this nice glass jar. That's great, but I don't know what's in that jar. Is it a pill? Is it a powder? Is it gummies? Show the packaging and show the finished product or the end product. And then the other, going back to what I said earlier, just never make users think that they might be your first customer, right? As soon as they land on your site, they should get hit in the face with some type of social proof. If you don't have a ton of reviews, focus on how many units you've sold. If you haven't sold a ton of units, focus on how long you've been doing it, right? Over 10 years experience in the space. There's something you can come up with. Even if they are the first customer, there's some frame of wording that you can use that makes it feel trustworthy. And so just focus on that and make sure that it's, when they get there, they feel comfortable that they're not the guinea pig for your store.
Fabulous. All right. So our last question, what is one underrated tactic or strategy that's helping brands turn one-time buyers into repeat loyal customers? Kristin?
I think this really ties perfectly into our lovely partners that we have here today. And I think that what normally gets overlooked is rewarding people after they've bought from you. So I think everybody focuses on first-time buyer promos and, what about a little thanks for being here surprise, for customers who already said yes, those personalized letters that you guys do, those free things, the rewards program. I love a good rewards program. If you give me a card and tell me to punch it and I'll get something free afterwards, that's going to make me buy more than I normally would just so I can get that free thing. And I'm spending more money than I would have to begin with. But it's always, taking care of your customers after the fact and not just pushing for those, everybody comes in, I want to convert, but how do you keep them coming back? And I think those are the little things that, do keep people a part of your little family for sure.
Love it. Arian?
Yeah, I mean, even building on that too is like to focus on the why, right? If you're talking about loyalty after somebody becomes a customer, why should they stick around and stick with you and continue buying from your brand as opposed to going somewhere else? This day and age, people have a lot of choices, and there's typically a lot of different products that are similar or similar enough. So, like for me, the one big hack is to inject a little bit of the why behind, like, why did you start the brand? What's your mission? Those are the things that people really want to connect with. That's going to keep them around when they could, bounce and go to a competitor or a different product that does the same thing. They're going to stick with you because they like the mission, or they like the why, they like the story behind your brand. So that's kind of the hack that we see. We kind of work with our customers and our clients to kind of pull out that why, and then use that why, use that story in a lot of the notes that we send at strategic moments in the customer journey.
Perfect. And then Shaun, what's one underrated tactic or strategy that you've seen?
I think a lot of brands, there's kind of 2 ways that you can give away freebies when it comes to orders. Both of them should come with higher AOV, right? So you're trying to drive users to increase their order value to unlock something. A lot of supplement brands, you'll see they're ordering, let's say, a big pack of whatever, electrolytes, and they toss in a few sample packs of other flavors, right, as a little freebie. That can be really expensive, right? You got to produce those, custom packaging, certain order value. It can be very cumbersome. But I think there's ways to do that outside of direct product related freebies, right? So if I'm ordering supplements, I don't have to get more supplements. It can be something tertiary that's just a nice delight. The example I was giving last week was, the brand that does it best, which is McDonald's, right? You're buying food and they're giving you toys. there's absolutely no relation there, right? Aside from people that buy Happy Meals have kids. What do kids love? Toys. Okay, we're gonna get toys. Brands can't obviously produce their own custom toys, but you get where I'm getting, where it doesn't need to be something directly related to the products themselves. It can be just a nice, delightful thing that makes people remember you and keeps you top of mind. And at the end of the day, just like in retail, part of the reason that, you know, I'm going to end up at Target or a supermarket is because my kid wanted some little small thing. And then once you're there, you're buying more stuff. And so trying to access other parts of their world to get purchases like that is amazing, right? If I don't ever want to eat McDonald's, but if my kid sees that there's some new toy from a new movie they want, we end up there eating that shitty food because they have these toys with it, right? And it's an amazing tactic. And so I think just finding those little delights that's going to remind people about your brand, even when it's not top of mind or it's not even something they're looking for, it's a lost art, right? You know, free toys and cereal boxes, all that stuff. It's a truly something that just doesn't really happen that much anymore. And I think while those are very expensive ways of doing it, I think there are really some low-hanging fruit you could do. You know, ordering bulk toys off of AliExpress or Amazon that are, you know, something like that. There's ways to do it that isn't expensive. So I think that's for me, one of the more complex ways, but also one of the stickiest ways to do it.
Love it. And last but not least, Karley?
Yeah, for us, it's really around fast, reliable shipping. That's going to convert your customers. I think there's really easy ways to do this while increasing your AOV, right? Saying, hey, we're going to offer 2-day shipping because we have distributed inventory. We can use standard ground rates. And then we're going to say spend $200 and unlock free 2-day shipping. But the end customer doesn't need to know that that's going ground shipping and it's not really going 2-day air shipping, right? And so that's just really ways I think you can help build that AOV and just give your customers that delight and just really nail the post-purchase end-to-end shipping experience.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That kind of concludes all of our panel questions. So I do want to open it up for like a really quick Q&A. I did see one question come on kind of early on for Kristin. I don't know if that was answered in the chat or not, but somebody asked, what metrics or KPIs do you recommend tracking at each stage of the customer journey to measure impact on revenue? Kristin, do you have any insights there on like specific KPIs that you look at?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the stage. But the goal is always to connect behavior to business impact. So not just those vanity metrics. Would say there's like awareness stage. So I look at impressions, click-through rates, scroll depth. Are we capturing attention and making people curious enough, you know, to kind of keep going? There's that consideration stage. It's where I focus on time on site, bounce rate, interactions, key elements, things like a CTA or exploring product pages. So if users are poking around, the design is doing its job essentially. There's conversion stage. So obviously conversion rate matters, but I also track form completions, cart abandonment, micro conversions like button clicks. Sometimes fixing one form field even can move the needle more than a full redesign. And then, of course, there's the post-purchase stage. So that's where a lot of people drop the ball. I recommend tracking return visit rate, email open click rates, referral traffic, review submissions. So that tells you if your follow-up experience is building loyalty or just silence. So definitely following up and tracking those as well after purchase definitely helps. So good design should move these numbers. And if not, something's broken. So yeah, it should not just be pretty. So that answers your question.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristin. Were there any other questions from the audience?
Looks like Tina had a question here for the website designers, topic posts and products. Do you redesign for services?
Yes, we absolutely. SmartSites does. We're not, just tied to e-commerce. We do pretty much any industry. So we're actually really good at the service industry because that's what we do. We're a digital marketing service. So we can most definitely help with like redesigns with services. And we actually do free audits for those kind of things. So we can do like an audit of your site if you need extra help. Those are completely free. We would just connect with you after this webinar. Karley, okay, cool. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments out loud. Okay, well, it doesn't sound like we have any other questions, and I know we went a little bit over, so I'm just going to wrap things up. Really appreciate all of the panelists for coming on and answering all these questions and providing some really great examples and tactical ideas. If there's one thing that I'd pull from today, it's that, the best customer journeys are built incredibly intentionally, and that they're, very human and memorable. So huge thanks to Kristin, Arian, Shaun, and Karley for joining us today. And then I also want to thank everybody else who listened in and stayed the full time here. So hope you walk away a little bit inspired to reimagine your customer journey and actually get some more ROI from what you're doing. But yeah, I hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.